Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Counterparts. My name is John Henry Soto. As always, George Batista is here. We're doing something. I don't know if this is different. Is this different, George? I don't know. It may be
Well,
a little different. I don't know.
maybe a little bit, but
Yeah, I mean, when we interview people, those are spotlight, right? Those are spotlight conversations with
right.
creative minds. And today we're going to be doing a show about something that George and I know a lot about. Well, actually, we're actually going to learn a lot today too,
Hmm.
about the Bronx, where we actually became humans. I don't know how human we are, but we're very excited to bring this to you, and we're going to have a good time. So just stick around. All right, short and sweet.
I love it.
Welcome, welcome to the show. So George and I were talking, and this was I don't know when it was, a couple of weeks ago. We're talking about different topics and different things that we want to discuss on the show. Now we've been doing guests, right? We've had some incredible guests, right? I mean, we cannot complain about the guests. We've
Yeah.
had Steve Smith, right? Legendary drummer for Journey, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We had David Sanchez, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, E Street Band. We had Kenny Aronoff, who's played on over 300 million records. We've had Lee Haney, 8-time Mr. Olympia, incredible guests that we have. And the list goes on. We had Bobby Wiggins on, I think it was last week, right?
Yep.
The work that he's doing throughout the world through Narconon and drug rehabilitation. Incredible work. So we have been so fortunate that we've had these guests. But every now and then, George and I, we talk and we're like, you know what? We wanna talk about a subject that maybe we don't have a guest that we could bring in to kind of talk about the subject, right? We had like a I don't know, some New Yorker that that we can bring in, like Giuliani or something. That a great guest to have, right? Because he's like all about New York, right?
Right.
So that'd be really cool. But for now, it's just us.
Sorry,
And
you got us.
sorry, you got us. We're two New Yorkers. We're from the Bronx, born and raised. Now we currently don't live in the Bronx, and I'm going to say that as a transparency. So I want to be transparent, so people aren't thinking like, "Hey, where in the Bronx you live?" Well, we don't live there anymore, but I spend most of my life there. So did my family, and so did George. Um, and for the most part, I enjoyed a lot of it. There were some rough times, for me. There were some rough times, but I did enjoy a lot of it. And today we're going to go over some of the history of the Bronx. George and I are going to talk about, or I'm going to talk about a bit the building that I grew up in, because there's a lot of history in that building. And there's some new developments in that building actually that I think are interesting. And we're going to talk about music, because that's where George and I learned to play music, and that's where we started our band, our first band, our second band, right? Everything was just based on that. Hey, look who's on.
Oh, David Pryor, how are you,
Whoa.
sir?
All right, David Breyer is
Salute to
on. So
you.
that's actually, look, David,
Ah, very nice. See?
brand intervention.
Yes.
Always at my back.
Mine is on a
So
Kindle, but still, hey,
yeah, George has the Kindle.
I still have it.
Yeah, it's awesome. So we're going to be talking about the Bronx, and one of the things that was really interesting doing this research from the Bronx was that I was realizing how much I developed as a man there, where I
Mhm.
always thought, I developed more when I left, or when I got, married, or when I started working at my church, or whatever it was that I was doing. I thought that that's where more development happened, but really a lot of it happened throughout those years,
Yep.
learning to
Mhm.
deal with the struggles, the
Right.
getting the confidence to be able to move forward, getting the skill set to get a job, to
Right.
move out, all that stuff really was during those years. Learning how to play, how many
Mhm.
hours did we just sit behind? I sat with that guitar, where my grandparents were worried, they were concerned. They were
Yeah.
like, "You sure you don't want to go outside this year?" um and I would just not go out. So, but and George too. George played the drums, so George tortured his family a little bit more.
Oh yeah, I tortured my neighbors. I tortured my mother, my poor mother. Oh my god! But it's interesting because you as we're two Hispanics in the Bronx. We're playing music, but we're playing stuff that you really don't see much of in the Bronx,
That's true.
right? We're
That's
listening to
true.
stuff that you really don't see
We
a
were just
lot of.
talking about that before we went live. But
Right, exactly. You know, we're listening to music and we're playing music that's really not music that you would find a lot of in the Bronx.
Correct. And I think that's what separated us and made us a little bit different in the
Right.
sense that we were able to have the Latin influence because I was very influenced by Latin music. I loved Latin music. I love salsa music. I love, merengue music. I love all Spanish music. Have a little problem with the reggaeton because I know that it gets mixed into being Spanish.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't like it. It's just that I really don't like it. Sorry. No, but I don't.
What are you trying to say, John?
Yeah, I think it's not to be a prude, but I think it's a little raw for me. It's too dirty, I guess you would say. You know what I mean? Like I just don't think that's a thing. But let me see. David is saying,
What time?
I don't know, but he's always throwing me off.
Oh yes.
He's always in like 7/9. The hardest time signature I could ever think of playing.
Yes, I'm playing Sting's 7 Days. 7 days is all she wrote.
I love that song, man.
That's a great song, man. I think it's in.
We got to talk about songs like albums that we love one day too, because I was just listening to 10 Sumner's Tale, which is that album.
It's such an amazing. That's one of my favorite albums in the
it's
world.
One of my favorite albums.
Yeah,
it's not only one of my favorite Sting albums, but it's one of my favorite albums.
Yes.
Period. Every track on that is like brilliant.
Yes, agreed.
Do you know when that came out?
It was a 90.
It was like 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's
Next
right.
year
Because they just
30
celebrated the 30-year anniversary. Not too long
I
ago,
think it's they're celebrating it now.
Now, okay.
I think it came out, or maybe not. Maybe you're right. I think you're right. It's 92, I believe. But yeah, 30 years. I can't believe it. I remember when I bought it. I mean, I was only 2 years old, so I started very early purchasing a lot of stuff.
And you were the same size.
God.
All right, we're off
You're
topic.
upstate New York. I would punch your kneecaps.
Oh, I'm in the city.
Yeah, that's right. You're on top of the world. All right, so today we're going to be talking about the Bronx, not that area behind them, but if you go further that way, you're looking downtown, or are you looking? Is this uptown?
Well, the Empire State Building's like right over
there,
so
but that's in the center.
Yeah.
So I would say that's downtown. So your Bronx is uptown. So you're this way. So if you go right in front and where George is, you have the Bronx. Now the Bronx is one of the 5 boroughs. People always forget one of them. See who can name all the boroughs. There's of course Manhattan. There's Brooklyn. There is the Bronx. There is Queens. And there is the little island that everyone tends to forget. Good old Staten Island. Which is the borough that I've been to the least out of all the boroughs. But I have a connection to all of them. I've lived in Queens. I've lived in the Bronx. I've lived in Manhattan. I worked in Brooklyn. My daughter was born in Brooklyn. So New York City was really important to me overall. But the Bronx we're going to talk about. So, George, I know you said you've been digging up some facts or some stuff about the Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
You said you were going to surprise me. By the way, I apologize if I sound a little nasally. I got my nose is just a little nasally. What am I going to say? So if it's not your microphones, or it's not your speakers, I should say.
By the way, the Bronx is the only borough that starts with right?
Right, because it's named after a family, right?
Correct. Now, so what, you want me to go over the cool facts?
Just give me one fact, and then we'll just break it down.
We can do it as we go along. Maybe
yeah. Because I want to talk about the building that I grew up in, because there's a lot of history in this building.
Absolutely. Okay. Did you know, John, that the Bronx had the first Hall of Fame in the United States?
Really?
Yes, it did.
That I did not know. I'm expecting to go, yeah, I knew that, George. Wait, the first
I told you I was going to surprise you. So check it out. The Hall of Fame for Great Americans is an outdoor sculpture gallery located on the grounds of Bronx Community College in the Bronx. Wow. It is the first such Hall of Fame in the United States.
So wait a minute. How long ago are we
This
talking
was,
about?
I mean, this was a long time.
So
This was
obviously there's no Rock and Roll Hall of
no,
Fame,
because this includes like
Baseball Hall of Fame.
no, it doesn't have those figures. It has like George Washington. It has like
Right.
figures, and then figures of people that you really don't know but still played an important role in history.
Oh, like America Hall of Fame.
Correct, but it's the
Okay.
first Hall of Fame. So
Oh, just in general,
in
overall.
general, as far as America, so the term Hall of Fame really was coined in the Bronx.
Wow, how about that?
And just so you guys can see, I'm putting up a little picture of it. This is what it looks like.
Okay, you know what?
This
I've seen this.
this is again, this is Bronx Community College,
Yeah,
and this
I've
is the
seen
Hall of
this.
Fame of Great Americans.
Holy cow, I had no idea. I
So
thought those were
yeah.
ex-baseball players when I saw it.
Unless George Washington played baseball, it wasn't.
Well, he might have.
Well, that's true. Good.
I doubt it.
So yeah, so that's a little fact for
That's
you there.
that's America. That's amazing. I didn't know that. Okay, so well, Bronx Community College, I used to go to a little history there. My mom actually used to work there. She worked there for a little bit. She also went to school there for a little bit.
Really?
And yeah, and
Cool.
I remember going there and visiting her once when I was a little older. But yeah, she so yeah, I didn't know that. That's interesting. Cool.
Mhm.
So as far as the Hall of Fame is concerned, um, there's no proof that somebody in North Dakota didn't put up a monument and call it, this is the Hall of Fame of all the people that live here. So we can't really.
Listen, don't
I'm just saying.
don't screw up my facts, okay? Because this is fact, not alternative fact.
Hey, look who's on. Who just left us?
Bobby Watts.
Bobby Watts. I
Hello,
grew up,
sir.
lived in the Bronx for almost 30 years, where my wife and I raised our three now grown sons in the Bronx. Love Brooklyn and love the Bronx. Very grateful to have grown up in New York City and have raised my kids in New York City. That's awesome.
Hey, Bobby, where in the Bronx did you live? I'm just curious.
That is so cool.
I grew up on two areas: Soundview on Classen Point near the water.
I'm a skeptic.
John's a skeptic. He's always a skeptic, yeah. And then I spent my later years into my teenage years in Castle Hill, Hill in the Bronx.
Yeah. Yep. It does. Juanita looks like history. Yep. Juanita.
Yes.
That was my mother's name.
Ah, look at that.
Yeah.
That's right. Cool.
David still wants to know what time signature.
5'4".
Yeah, 5'4". Well, that's awesome. So yeah, I mean, the Bronx and Brooklyn had this Northeast Bronx. Williamsburg. Yeah, Williamsbridge.
Yeah.
I used to ride my bike there a lot. I got mugged there. No, I'm just kidding. I did not get mugged there. I was just making a joke. But yeah, no, Williamsbridge was awesome. Really nice up there, actually. I think that's where Albert Einstein Hospital was, and all those really nice hospitals. Mr. Soto, you always great. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh man, how much did that cost?
Check in the mail. I appreciate that. Thank you, Juanita. So
go ahead,
go ahead about what?
No, you said you were going to talk about your building.
Oh yes. But first, I'm not done with this whole Hall of Fame nonsense. No, I'm just kidding. No, but let's talk about legendary buildings. So a lot of people don't know, if you go to the Bronx and you see these old tenement buildings, like pre-war buildings, they all have a name on them. So buildings just had a name. They didn't have a number back in the 20s and stuff. It wasn't like you went to an address. You just went to a building. Deliver this to my building was called Chester Hall. There was and there was another building called it was DuPont.
Right.
There was another big, huge building called DuPont. And so we had all these buildings. And I remember when I was growing up, because when I realized that as a kid, people would say, "Where you live?" And I'd be like, "I live in Chester Hall." They'd be like, "Chester Hall? Like, where's that?" Right there on the corner of Southern Boulevard. Like, man, you live at 1058 Southern Boulevard, man.
Chester Hall.
Chester Hall, you sound all fancy.
Yeah.
No, but I like that. Chester Hall. It just sounds. It sounds cool. I don't know who this is, but it says, "Shut up, skinny. You look like you've been working out, George. Let JHS have his fans."
Yeah, well,
I can't tell what it is. It just says Facebook user for some reason. But listen, man.
don't
Uh,
be anonymous. Show yourself. Don't mess
yeah,
with me.
right.
I'm from the Bronx, man. Don't mess with me.
That's right. That's right. You know, the whole Bronx thing, being tough, is also something that was funny because growing up there, everything around us seemed tough. But
Right.
like I was listening to BB King,
Right.
I'm like, the thrill is gone.
Yeah.
You know, I'm listening to Stevie Ray Vaughan, I'm listening to Santana, and I knew that that was going on around me, but I was so well protected by my grandparents as far
Right.
as the violence and stuff like that. I didn't really jump into that whole toughness of the Bronx thing. You know what I mean? So
Right.
even though I had some friends that I was
Yeah.
grateful that I had them because they helped me out during some during some rough times. But um, so Chester Hall. So I'm going to show the building, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this building because this was kind of and I have a story that I'll tell about it, and then we'll move on um, to another Bronx fact. Let me get a sip of coffee here so my voice can sustain this. Okay, I'm going to talk lower. Can you hear me? All right. So 1058 Southern Boulevard was the building that I was when I was born, and they had me like this. They brought me to 1058 Southern Boulevard. That is where I actually grew up. Didn't grow up much from this. It's kind of thick. But during those years, we lived in three different apartments in this one building. So now I go back every once in a while. I took this picture. I don't know how long ago. This was a while
Nice.
back.
I remember that
Um,
train.
but
Holy cow.
yeah, I know. I mean, this is where I was waiting for the. It's the 2 of the 5 train on Simpson Street
Right.
in in the South Bronx, and that building right there behind me is 1058 Southern Boulevard.
Which my family
And
lived there as well.
yes, yes, and I made a little graphic for us.
Oh, look at that.
So this is what sort of what it looks like. Actually, no, this is not what it looks like today. I'm going to show that picture as well, but those circles is where is where I lived because I'm cheesy that way. But yeah, I lived in 401 when I was born, which is out there on the right of your screen or left, depending on how you're watching it. Um, on the top there, that was the fifth floor. That was 503, and then 304, which is where your grandma lived,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And in this building had such an amazing energy because it was all our families were in there.
Yep.
Our aunt was in 308, Titi Lula,
Yeah.
Titi Toya, your
My
grandmother.
grandmother. Yep.
Then my grandmother lived in 401. When your grandmother moved out, we took your apartment.
Right.
We moved into that apartment.
Exactly.
'Cause my grandmother loved moving. She just loved moving and buying new things. We moved like almost like 11 times,
Wow.
but 3 times in that building, and we lived
Hmm.
there for a long time. Um, but this particular building in during the holidays, this is my story. All my uncles used to play guitar. That's where I learned to play guitar. That's where my passion came from guitar. My first chords was Tiolalo, and I had this little guitar that my grandfather bought me from a store right on just on the block called El Palacio. I don't know if you remember.
Hmm.
Palacio
Yeah.
was a music store. They sold
Music store.
records and all
Yeah.
that stuff. And when I was 9 years old, my grandfather grabbed me by the hand. He's like, "Come on, we're gonna go out." And we went out, and we go into this music store, and we would always go in there all the time. My grandfather, back in those days, my grandfather used to hit the sauce a little bit.
Hmm.
He was he was a wonderful, wonderful man. He was my father. I never met my real dad. I couldn't have asked for a better role model as a father.
Right.
But he liked to drink in the early days when I was young, and so he would take me to this music store constantly. And whenever he would hear a song on the radio, he'd go in there to try to tell the guy he didn't know the name of the song,
Hmm.
and then he couldn't really sing. So he would walk in there and he goes, in Spanish, of course, he would say, I got this song, and it goes, así, así. ¿Tú sabes la canción?
Right.
Y dice, "Sútate, que no me hermosa." And this was, and the guy over the counter would be like, "¿Qué?" No, 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 no. No conozco. I don't know that song. You just would not know. But my grandfather would always go in there, and I would always go with him. But one day he grabbed me and he said, "Let's go. We're going to the music store." And he points up all these guitars and he's like, "Which one do you like?" So I'm just like, "Nah, I like that one." I like that. I was like 9. I was actually 9. And he brings one down. He shows it to me. We get the Mel Bay books, the ones that you
Oh
can
yeah.
never learn out of anything out of.
Yes.
They're like useless, useless music books. But we got the two Mel Bay books, and then we got the guitar in a beautiful guitar case. It was a Spanish guitar, nylon strings, and he handed it to me. He's like, "Here." So I walk home. I'm walking home. I'm literally like, I can't believe, is he giving this to me, or are we walking home to deliver it to somebody? I was like so amazed. And I got home, and so he told my grandma, like, "Hey, le compré una guitarra." I bought him a guitar. So I opened it up, and my uncle had stopped by because he played, and my grandfather called him and he said, "You got to come." It was my grandmother's brother,
Mhm.
Diolalo.
Right.
So he came by and he showed me my first chord, which I'll never forget. It was an E chord. He put my fingers where they were, and he said, he tuned the guitar. First of all, he tuned it for me, and then he showed me how to tune and stuff, which I didn't understand at all. But he showed me that first chord, the E chord, and I remember when I first hit that chord, my whole life,
Changed. Yeah.
everything just happened. My whole existence fell out of that chord because it was just so. I created that sound
Right.
based on this fingering. You know what
Right.
I mean? Because if I take my fingers off and I hit it, it's different, and I put
Right.
it on there, and it sounds really nice.
Right.
So it completely like changed my whole life. I'm like, and then during the holidays, we would my uncles all played. It was Tio Marcelo, if you remember Tio
Yeah, I
Marcelo,
remember him.
Tio Lalo, and a few other people from the building would all play guitar. So during the holidays, like during Christmas time, they would go around the buildings, around, because remember, this building was a really lively building. A lot of people knew each other. It was
Mhm.
it was a really, really beautiful place to grow up. It also had like a little area inside, so when you went in the building, you were sort of out away from the streets, right? You
Yeah.
were sort of like
Yeah.
into this little community, right?
Mhm.
And so they all would go around to all the apartments and knock on the door, and they would play the guitar, and they would sing a song that, George, you probably remember, that it goes, "Si no me dan de beber lloro, si
Oh,
no
si
me
no
dan
me dan
de
de
beber
beber
lloro."
lloro. Yes.
Right. So they would sing, which basically translated means, "If you don't give me a drink, I'll cry."
Right.
Right. So,
Right.
"Si no me dan de beber lloro." So they will go around, and it's kind of a celebration. "If you don't give me a drink, I'll cry." So we went all around. Now there was 54 apartments in this building, 6 stories, right? So after like the third floor, everyone is giving them drinks. So
Yeah.
it so it became a little chaotic. We never really made it to the 6th floor. I don't think we ever made it past the 3rd floor, to be honest. We would start down at the lobby, we'd go all the way up, and I would go with my guitar, even though I didn't really know how to play, but I would just like kind of like, I knew that one chord, and I knew it
Right.
was in some of the songs.
Right.
I would
Right.
just hit it. Whenever I would just hit it. And I would go around with it. This happened a few Christmases, at least 3 or 4 Christmases, that we would do this, and then everyone would disappear into houses. I don't know where everybody went,
Mhm.
and usually it was just me and my grandfather. And my grandfather was at somebody's house sitting down talking,
Right.
because my grandfather didn't play, but he would go along with us. And then I would just go home by myself with my guitar, and my grandmother would be like, "Where is everybody?" I was like, "I don't know." But they all separated. But anyway, this building was just wonderful. So I want to just show this couple of more pictures that I have here. So this is the train that
Yep.
we. This was the lifeline
Mhm.
for us. This is what got us into Manhattan. This is where the train that I took to see first musical shows. I took this train to go play gigs, right?
Mhm.
Um, gosh, I mean, this was the train I went to school in when I went to college for that week. Um, and this was the stop that I would get on, Simpson Street.
Simpson Street.
Simpson Street is a very important street because it's the first street that my whole family moved to
Mhm.
when they arrived here in the 50s. They moved. They all lived in Simpson Street, and they were all kind of. It seemed like there was an exodus, right? And everybody was coming, and then whoever could come first would come and get settled in, and then help the next person come.
Right.
And it
Yes.
was a
Yes.
really nice thing. My grandfather came first. My grandfather got here. he got a job as a super working
Mhm.
in a building at the, and you know, boiler and doing all that stuff. And then one day he goes in to a like a pool hall kind of place, and he sees a television for the first time. He told me this story, and he sees a television. It was on Simpson Street, and he says that he was staring at it. He's like didn't understand what was happening, like these images that were coming from this box. He called up his my grandmother at the
Mhm.
time, who was still in Puerto Rico with my mom, and called and told her it's this box that has all these. It's called una televisión,
Right.
And he's talking to her and he's explaining it to her because Puerto Rico had not. There were still radio,
Yep.
television was nowhere near there at this point. I'm sure that some people had, but not in a campo where people were living. But yeah, Simpson was a big deal, and then recently, as I was researching for this episode, I wanted to kind of talk about this building because there was I have a lot of stories about this building, which I only told one now.
Mhm.
Maybe we'll do this again. I'll tell some more stories as the years go on. But one of the interesting things, I was always had affinity for this building.
Right.
So a few years ago, I did a podcast. Before we did this show, I did a podcast, and I was talking about this building, and it was an audio podcast, and then I wrote an article, a blog based on the Bronx and whatever. So I get a message from this guy named Lawrence Toby, who happens to be an architect who's working on some plans for this one particular building, 1058 Southern Boulevard. He just happened to find my
Wow.
blog based on his research, and he found my blog and stuff. And so he reached out to me via email or from my website or something, and we got a phone call and we started chatting, and we've been chatting ever since. And he keeps me up to date of where the building is,
Look at
because
that.
what happened in 2013, the building became just a real nightmare.
Mhm.
It was actually on one of the top lists for one of the worst landlords in the country. Actually, like
Really?
yeah, and it had like 80 violations, and
Mhm.
like people were living with mold on the wall.
Wow.
Kids were getting sick. It was like disgusting. I saw pictures and everything. I didn't want to show those pictures because
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
a pleasant thing, but it really broke my heart to see that, and he told me he would call me and ask me questions to see if I remembered things about when I was a kid. So George, I don't know if you remember this, but do you remember the entryway?
Yes.
Remember you might there was a big
There,
corridor,
there was
right?
a big, that big. Yes.
Big
Yeah.
kind of a square,
Yep.
empty corridor. That's not empty anymore.
Really?
That's where the garbage goes now.
You kidding me?
When you come out that door, there's this huge structure that they built, and you have to go in and you throw the garbage into that. That's where the
Holy
garbage
cow.
gets taken out. Now, you remember we never saw garbage.
Right.
Garbage
Right.
would be thrown in that thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And then we would bring it down to the basement, and the
Right.
basement would I don't know how they got rid of it. It's probably still there, but they would get rid of it somehow. So he was trying to figure out where the garbage was thrown out, and
Mhm.
what ended up happening. I don't know if you remember. There was a supermarket that was on the other side of it, right? I don't know
Mhm.
if I have any pictures with it, but I do want to show another photo that I have here. But hold on one sec. Um, you can talk, George, because I'm just
Okay.
in the middle of something.
Well, that's crazy that I can't believe that part of it. But it's
I know.
interesting because I didn't spend much time in that building because I didn't spend much time at all because by the time I was growing up, my grandparents and everybody had moved out of there. But
Well,
there was my earliest memories were because we went to school a few blocks away from there, right? Which I don't know if you have a picture of that school,
yeah,
but my grandmother used to work in the bank
that's
that
right.
was right there. It was called the Banco de Ponce.
That's right.
So I used to visit her at the bank when there goes our school,
St. John's
St.
Chrysostom.
John's Chrysostom.
I got tortured.
But here's the thing about that. We were in school. I mean, obviously you were older than me because you were always in the older grades, right? And I was with your brother
Mm-hmm.
because your brother and I were in the same grade. But I used to look at I we used to be out, and the eighth graders, seventh and eighth graders, used to be in a different area
Yeah,
from where we were.
the cool cats.
Exactly. So I would look to see where John was with his buddies, and he would be surrounded by this gang of thugs. And he was like the tiny guy in the middle, and everybody was like 6 feet around him. But he was like,
I was 3 feet and everyone was just 5 feet.
Exactly. Well, whatever it was, but he was like the mafia don of this gang. And I'm like, holy cow, he's like running stuff. That's my
I was
earliest
always,
memories.
I was always, and I don't want to say popular like in some arrogant way, but I always had a lot of people that would hang out with me because I made people laugh.
Yes.
Um, I didn't, I didn't talk like everyone else. I didn't want to talk like everyone else.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I didn't. So they people would laugh, and so I would get these little crews of. I mean, it's a Catholic school, so how much
Yeah.
thugness is there?
Exactly.
But still, I mean, this was the I guess the 70s, I guess, and but one of the things that I really loved about that time was leaving because even though even though I remember I was a nervous kid, even though like you saw what you saw there, that was because
Yeah.
I was in my element, I was talking, I was
Yeah.
happy, I was, but when I was in class, especially when in the younger years, before you got there, when I went all 8 years to that school, right?
Mhm.
So my first, second, third grade were really rough years for me, because people forget this, and this is something that I picked up later on as I did my training in my church and my all the stuff that I learned about myself during these years. But I only spoke Spanish 99% of the time. Remember, my grandparents
That's
did
right.
not
Because
speak
you grew up.
English.
Yeah, that's true. You grew
They
up
raised
speaking
me.
Spanish.
My
Yeah.
mom would come by, and my mom would sometimes talk to me, and I didn't realize that I didn't really fully know what she was saying to me all the time in English
It's
because
amazing.
I was always Spanish.
Right.
So when I went to school, they were just like, yeah, just throw them in there. This was back in the days where you had to make do, right? And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I prefer that than what they do now. But they threw me in there, and I didn't know what teachers were asking me. I didn't know what they were saying. I didn't. So I was crying a lot. I was really upset, and I was tiny. If you can imagine what I was in first grade, how tiny I was, And I used to get knocked down with kids running and stuff. So it built me up to when I got to fourth grade and fifth grade, I realized that I could say things and people would laugh or think it was witty, whatever it is. Even the teachers would do that,
Right.
would say that. So I started using that to kind of just really defend myself because I was so scared really most of the time. I mean, I really was,
Well, a lot of time the humor can diffuse the situation, right?
it
I
really
mean,
did. And I
yeah.
used it. I still use it,
Yeah.
I'm not diffusing anything anymore because I don't really give a shit anymore.
Right.
I'm who I am. But back in those days, I used it, a lot. But going to this school was really a blessing because I got to get the discipline that I needed.
Right.
That I don't know, discipline. I don't like the word discipline. There was
Maybe a
I got to be
structure.
around people.
Yeah.
There was some
Yeah.
type of structure there
Right.
that I did not hate. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like
Mhm.
I enjoyed
Mhm.
when I was able to hang around people.
Right.
I enjoyed that part of it. I did not really care too much for the way that some of the nuns were treated and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And we're not going to go into that. We'll do a whole show on that because I
Yeah.
think Catholic school was something that we can do a whole show on.
Yes. Very
Catholic school.
interesting. Yes.
Yeah, very interesting, especially back in the days. I don't know what it is today,
Mhm.
but back in the days, it was yeah, it was interesting. So that was the school, and what I wanted to show earlier
Mhm.
was this photo, George.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Holy cow.
it's like the 20s.
Amazing.
So yeah, this is our building, and this is another angle that I want to show you, which I thought this was really a cool angle. Look at this one.
Oh, look at that with the train. You can see the train there and
Yeah.
everything.
Now check it out. Across the street, all those buildings are gone. Remember, if you look here on the left of the screen, that's our building, right?
Right.
Here's the car down at the bottom. You see the old school
Yeah.
1930 something. You see the trolley in the middle there, another
Right.
horse and wagons. And then those buildings now, I mean, that's like the Dunkin' Donuts,
Wow.
all that stuff that's across the street there. The Learners, remember Learners?
Yeah, learners. Oh my God.
Learners, yeah. And then this was in the I guess this looks to me like the 60s.
Yeah,
Sometime
yeah,
like
it does look
maybe
like the
late
60s. Yeah,
50s, early 60s sometime. I couldn't get a date on this
I
one.
remember when the buses had those things on the top.
I,
Holy cow!
yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember that too. So, but a lot of those buses really were around for about to the
For
70s,
yes, yes.
maybe even into the 80s, really,
Mhm.
because I do remember that. But you said something earlier about you didn't spend a lot of time in there, but you did spend a lot of time in there. You just don't remember. But
Well, yeah. I
you
mean,
were
I
usually
was
dropped off every single day for babysitting there.
right, well, yeah, that's very true. So I used to stay with Titi Lula, and
Yeah,
I was a kid, and she, they used to drop me off there, and I mean, I do have some vague memories of it and being
yeah.
with her, and she used to take me to 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 get the to what do you call it, the vivero, right? The
We
where they
got
get the
all to get
chickens,
to get the live
to
chickens.
get the live chickens and stuff. She used to
Yeah,
take me there, watch her with the chicken heads and all these things. And I'm like, holy cow! And she was tough, man.
yeah.
She
No,
was
she ran the family. Really, she
yes,
was
she
the
was
Don
tough.
of the family. I
She
mean,
lived
she
it
was.
well into her 90s.
Hmm.
I mean, she was amazing. But
Yeah,
I remember those times, and then from there, from that point, my family moved into the areas where they're living. I still have family that lives in that area now, which is Classen Point in the Bronx.
yeah.
But and my parents got married. That's where I started, growing up and stuff like that. And
The funny thing about those viveros, they always stunk, right? They would just
yes,
get the
yes.
place. My grandmother would go there, and we would get she would buy a chicken and bring it to Titi Lula, and
Hmm.
I would see a chicken walking around the house, and I'd be like, oh, the chicken, and then later on the chicken would disappear. I don't know what happened to the chicken.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm eating chicken. I'm like, where's the chicken? Oh, I wonder where this chicken is. You know, um, but yeah, she was. Back in. I mean, this is people that live on the farm. That's how you survive.
That's how they
I
did
mean,
it.
there was
Exactly.
no, and it when they came here to the Bronx, it was no difference. The survival.
Right.
That's why these viveros opened up because they
Right.
needed to have places for these people to buy this stuff.
Absolutely.
Juanita's
Absolutely.
laughing because wondering where that chicken is. But one of the things that I always loved was that there was such a history there that we got a little bit of, what I mean?
Yes.
Even though
Yes.
we were in this, metropolitan-ish environment, there was still this history of our families living in what they call en el campo, right? In las
Right. Right.
fincas and raising chickens, and then that was your food.
Yeah.
The eggs were your food, the animals were your food. So we had that experience, and I remember my grandma going there and buying all the stuff, and everybody knowing her name and stuff, and the counter was like huge for some reason in these places. I don't know, like I'm short, and I know I'm short, so when I go somewhere, I could see a tall counter, and that makes sense. But these things were like massive.
Right. Right.
They were like, I don't know what they thought. They thought they were like the king and queens up there, like selling us chickens. But these experiences were something that I think were meaningful.
Yes. I
It
agree.
was
I
it
agree.
was meaningful.
And it definitely, again, it shapes the character.
It does.
Shapes the character going through all that and seeing
100%.
all these things.
And so, just to end off on this 1058 on the Boulevard building, so I read that article. It was from 2013. So I thought, well, and I'd been there before that. Obviously, my sister still lives in the Bronx, and I have family in the Bronx, like George's
Hmm.
family is my family. And we were so I was researching it, and I found an article, and I realized that the building right now is under renovation, and this is what it looks like today, actually. So
Oh, okay.
this was taken this year, so it's getting a facelift, which is
Cool.
very
Cool.
exciting, actually, to
Yeah,
see that.
definitely.
And what I was telling my wife last night, I was telling her, I was saying, I don't understand how the South Bronx hasn't been gentrified yet. Not that I
Right.
want that, because I know that sometimes brings heartache to some of the
Right.
people that are there.
Right.
But if you live there, you should invest there and make money by the growth, instead of thinking that you can't survive the growth. Just my own personal opinion.
But
Please don't kill me.
but it's interesting
But
because
yeah, go
no,
ahead.
I was going to say, because it's interesting considering what the Bronx went through. Think about the 70s, right? The Bronx was
Fires,
burning, right?
right?
It's
That's a real
interesting.
thing.
Yeah, right. It was literally burning,
It was a real thing.
and it was a real thing. There's documentaries on it, and actually, what I didn't know was very interesting because actually, I was watching a documentary on it where they talked about what was called redlining and
Oh yeah,
what they did, and I didn't really
that's a
realize it.
real estate term.
Real estate, right? But what they would do is they would draw lines around these certain areas of the Bronx, and typically they would say, okay, well, the Bronx has typically, Hispanic or Black Americans in there, and it's typically considered like a more lower income or poor neighborhood, and they would put a red line about it around it saying, don't invest there, or insurance companies don't do any kind of don't do any kind of
Yeah,
insurance transactions there because the risk is very, very high.
right.
And there was a lot of controversy on why the Bronx was that way, and were the politicians actually really paying attention to it or not.
They were not. They were just in self. It was just in self interest. Most
Right.
of them. I mean, part of the reason after they did that, a lot of the landlords had to get rid of these buildings. They couldn't sell the
They
building because
couldn't.
who's going to buy a building
Right.
in a red circle?
Hmm.
They weren't going to buy it, so they had to figure out ways to do it, and insurance money was a easy way to do it.
Exactly.
And I remember I always tell the story about being about 5 years old or something, and pushing a chair to the window to look out the window. I still have to do that today, by the way. But pushing, I'm just kidding. But anyway, pushing a chair to the window and looking out, it felt like it was almost every night to see
Yeah.
the fires,
Yeah. Yeah.
because every night there was a fire in the distance. We lived on the fourth floor, 401, and I would go out and I would look out and I would see where the fire was tonight, and I would see a fire. I would see a building burning, and I remember there was this image burnt in my head, no pun intended, of this firefighter, and he was like on one tenement building.
Right.
He was like over here, right? He was like on this building, standing like this, and the building that was burning was standing right here where the microphone is, right?
Right.
So he was actually leaning this way. He had the hose on, and the pressure of the hose, he was leaning forward almost all the way. The alley was right here between the buildings. He was leaning forward like this, putting out that fire of that building, like all the
Wow.
way this way, like that. Like, and it was, I remember thinking, even as a kid, like having some notion that pressure and that hose is the pressure is what's holding him up. If the hose stops, he falls right
Yeah.
into
Right.
he's
Exactly.
done. But I always remember that image. It's almost cinematic in my head because it was at nighttime when it was happening. So it was like this big fire burning, and you see this firefighter. But this was like what was happening back in the Bronx in the 70s,
Yes.
And unfortunately, a lot of what ended up happening was that the Bronx became this, and we're gonna have to do a part two of this because this is there's way too much stuff to cover. But what ended up happening was the South Bronx became the national it gained national attention
Right.
for all the wrong reasons
Exactly.
from the president.
Yeah.
President Carter came to
Hmm.
visit the ruins of the South Bronx.
Yep.
Ronald Reagan came
Well,
to
Reagan
visit.
was there. Yeah. Yep.
There was a movie called Fort Apache the Bronx with Paul Newman, a
Paul
great film.
Newman.
Great film. I remember seeing. I have a story about that I'll tell someday.
Today.
But I
Yeah.
remember seeing that being shot also on Fox Street, where I used
And
to
there was a
walk.
lot of criticism of that
A
movie
lot of
because of
criticism
what
came
it
out.
depicted about the Bronx, right?
Yeah,
It was,
yeah. I mean, unfortunately, it wasn't wrong.
no, it
It
was. I
wasn't
mean,
wrong. It was
and it's
just sad that the people that live there, that still live there, and me included, we were all there. All of
right,
us
right.
were still there during that whole time. The sad part is that we were still trying to gain our dignity of
Yes,
where we were
yeah,
living. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And that really made it an embarrassment that here's this high profile film. I mean, it had Paul Newman in it. It had Danny Aiello in it. It had
yep.
I can't remember the other guy's name, but great actor. He was in
Ken Wall.
yeah, him, Ken Wall. He was in Scarface. Um, these great actors, and so it was a high profile film, and it showed just the worst of the
Right,
Bronx.
exactly.
And as a matter of fact, because it got so much criticism, they had to actually put at the beginning of the film. This film is just a story,
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah,
it does not portray the people
right,
or doesn't represent the people there.
exactly.
Everyone is trying to do the best to revitalize the city, whatever, blah blah
Right.
blah. And Mayor Koch was the mayor at that point,
Hmm.
and I always liked Mayor Koch because he would just walk the streets. I met Mayor Koch twice
Right.
because I was a, you know, used to. It's kind of embarrassing, but I was kind of a break dancer, and
Yes, he was.
yeah, and I had a little bit of uh, people knew me a little bit because of my height, because I was short and I could dance. So I danced for the mayor on two different occasions, two different events. I danced for a few other organizations and stuff with a little crew that we had, and I got to meet the mayor. And he was always, he didn't care who he would ask. He would ask, "How am I doing?"
Right.
What politician today would walk around in a community and say, "How am I doing?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was that kind of that audacity
Mhm.
that he put himself out there in that way, and that people were kind of like, look, he's trying,
Right.
he's trying, and he didn't have a lot to work with. The Bronx was did not have any money. The drugs were running rampant.
Yeah.
The 80s crack was just all over the place,
Yep.
and it was just a rough place,
Exactly.
but with all that, somehow George and I got to get together, put
Yeah,
some
and
music out.
I want to kind of talk a little bit about that since we have some time. First of all, I want to give another fact
Go for it.
that some people, I know, John, you'll know this, but this is a little more of a known fact. But I wanted to give all the main facts that the Bronx contains the largest park in New York City,
That's right.
and that is Pelham Bay Park.
I
Now,
mean,
a lot
there
of
was,
people think that Central Park was the largest park, but no, Pelham Bay Park is like twice the size. I think.
designed by the same dude too.
Exactly.
Moses.
But Pelham Bay Park, which I spent many, many years, I would run the track in Pelham Bay Park. Actually, there was one point where, when I was growing up in my late teens, I lived across not across the street, but across the highway from it, and I would cross the bridge in the morning, like on a Saturday morning, and I would run the park.
Yeah,
And it's it's a fun park to be in. Really cool. You see a lot
beautiful
of people
park.
walking. Yeah, very beautiful park.
And they did a really nice job later on. I think that park is still pretty good. It's
It's been pretty. It's near a neighborhood called. There's some nice houses in those neighborhoods and stuff like that. It's a very nice area of the Bronx.
It's in the part of the Bronx that didn't burn.
Exactly. But if you get a chance to visit Pelham Bay Park, it's actually a pretty cool place. But I wanted to also talk about, so when John and I really started to hit it with music, or really started to get together with music, I lived on an area called Castle Hill in the Bronx. And I went to a school called Holy Family School. That's where, and I used to live literally across the street from that school. It was the same school that J-Lo went to. And that was one of the big things there. Yeah. And I could have gone out with her.
Yeah, you could have totally.
That's right.
Yeah.
But anyway, her mother was a teacher.
She was like, Jay, no.
You sure that wasn't you? No, but her mother was my gym teacher there, and so it was pretty cool. She was a few years ahead of me, but anyway,
she lived on Black Rock.
Yes, she did, and I lived on Chatterton, which was the next block over. But there was a music store called Castle Hill Music. That was a nice walk from where I used to live, and John went with me, and I got my first drum set from Castle Hill Music.
Yeah, well, let me backpedal a little.
Go ahead.
I was playing guitar already, and I was like, George, we should start a band, whatever I was saying. And so George always wanted to play the drums, but at this point he had been using a basketball as his bass drum. So he was literally hitting the basketball, and he had like a back of a chair or something. And I think you actually had sticks.
I had sticks. I had the pad of a chair. The basketball was the bass, and only because the basketball has actually that bass sound.
It had a thump in it, yeah.
It has a thump, so I would use that and the actual back of the chair because it had a kind of a snappy sound. This was my creativity at the time.
Yeah.
Watching, and because I was watching videos of drummers, and I would watch what they do, but I didn't have a drum set.
Right. So I remember saying one day, "Hey man, your birthday's coming up. You should tell your mother to get you a drum set." That's how I talked like that. And I remember we went to Castle Hill Music, and I remember when we got the drums home, you didn't know how to even set it up. Like, and I only knew from pictures I saw, like if I have guitar magazines I would have, and then they would have a picture of a drummer in the back,
Right.
And I'd be like, okay, so we kind of figured it out together, and we put it on, and then it led to many years of playing recording. And our last record that we did was this one right here, which was the View
View
from
from
Castle
Castle
Hill.
Hill.
Glass of No was our band. We recorded 3 records together. We had some radio play, which was really a lot of fun.
Mhm.
And we've told the story before about losing our good friend David de Gasprius, who passed away, suddenly, and kind of ended that for us. We tried to move on, right? We had some
Yeah.
great musicians come in, but we couldn't. It was just difficult to kind of go on. But the how grateful I am that in the Bronx we had these places to go to. Like El Palacio was there selling musical instruments, guitar, while everything is burning. These
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
poor people are trying to survive selling musical instruments and music.
Right.
I was able to get a guitar while all this craziness is happening around us. You were able to go to Castle Hill Music and get your drum set, even though there was all this stuff happening around us.
Yeah.
So we're grateful that they were there.
Yep.
And all the things that happened were for a reason.
Right.
It wasn't by accident. We pulled it in somehow. We created it
Mhm.
because we needed it and we wanted it.
Exactly. Exactly. We were always hungry. Excuse me. We were always hungry for more. We were always hungry for learning, whether it was music or whether it was, just learning art, learning different things. Again, how many times did we spend in the apartment in Castle Hill watching Bob Ross and
Star Trek,
and Star Trek and all these things? But that's
music
kind of
videos.
all of that framed what we do today,
Yeah,
and that
yeah,
type of
yeah.
thing. But it's really interesting lessons. And again, not everything was peachy and roses either. There was some tough times there.
No, I
There
mean
were,
for me, there were definitely
I
a
mean,
lot
for you,
of
you were more in the thick of it because where you were was a more rougher area than eventually where I was. But
right.
I still dealt with a lot of craziness. I
Yeah,
still
yeah,
dealt with, my car was broken into many times. I've had, my family had cars that were, taken from them and robberies and things like that. So,
yeah, yeah,
there was that stuff too,
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it was a different. I think it was different because, well, I can't really say that. There was violence, I mean, there
Of
was gun
course.
violence, there
Of
was
course.
drug use, there was a lot of things that were, that I tried to like really not focus on while I was there.
Right.
Like I've never
Exactly.
done any drugs,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like I mean, we've never done anything. We've
Right.
never,
Right.
I mean,
Exactly.
I'm
Yeah, we
saying
were
like you that you didn't,
that I didn't. I was
not
gonna
like
say I
you that
remember
you.
doing drugs. Well, maybe that one time, but
But like we never did drugs. We never smoked. We never
yeah,
did got we
yeah,
we would drink a little bit here and there, like just when we got a little older, obviously. Um, but it wasn't anything that was interesting to me. That was the main issue for me. Like I would see people smoking cigarettes, and I would think to myself, God, that's so much work.
right.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's
yeah,
so boring.
yeah.
Using drugs is so boring. That's what I used to think in my head. It was like just using drugs was so boring to me. Um, and that's why we never did it. And that's one of the reasons I think why we were able to put music together, while we were able to this is us here at some club.
There we go.
Look at John with his hair,
Yeah.
his shirt open, like
Nice. Look at
you
this.
can see his little pubes. Then my chest. Then that was Solly. Remember Solly?
Yeah, I remember Sally.
Yeah, funny guy.
Yeah.
Um, and then this is us when I had hair. Now, aren't you all pissed off that George looks exactly the same? Look at this
Well,
bastard.
first of all, I don't know what I'm doing
Look at
with Lin Manuel Miranda.
lights up, Washington Heights. Um, yeah, and look at me with that dark hair, that goatee. I always had a goatee, by the way, guys. This is
Yeah,
not
you were
new.
born with that.
Yeah, I was born, and my mom was like, "Pero qué es eso?" It's like, hey, some people are born like this, goatee baby. So, but one of the things that was really good about um, our growing up was that we were friends first,
Yes.
right? And then we started playing music and stuff.
Yes.
So there was already that connection of friendship. This is
Yeah.
why we're doing this today. This is
Exactly.
why we're here now, because we still get along. We still talk. We still have the
Exactly. I
same
mean,
stuff in common.
yeah, we
You
played
know,
ball. We were always laughing at the same things. We were always
yeah, the
playing
same kind of humor.
basketball.
Yeah,
And I mean, there was always something him and I were doing as a kid. I mean, I remember when I broke my leg and you came to the house with a basketball ready to play, and By the way, just so you guys know, I broke my leg, you
The day
know,
before.
the day before. Never told him, and he was coming the next day to play basketball.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm like
I'm
with the ball in my hand. I'm like, yo, ready? We can go
I'm
play
I'm,
some
se-
ball.
I'm 17 years old, a
I'm
senior in
walking
high
in. He's
school.
like this.
He opens the door, and I'm in crutches with this cast coming from the top of my leg all the way down to my ankle. He's like, "What the?"
Like, what
I
the
remember the
hell?
look at his face. I will never forget.
I was like, what the hell? So yeah, that started a whole bunch of jokes.
Yeah, but
Um,
we always played ball, in the parks
yeah.
there and everything. But
Do we have any more Bronx stuff?
yeah, I have a yeah. Let me go through some of these
Let's do one
facts.
more.
Okay,
Um, and yeah, let's do one more.
yeah.
And if
So
anybody has any questions or anything, if anybody's out there and anything about the Bronx,
absolutely.
please let us know.
So
I have some more pictures here, but I'm gonna probably save those for another episode at some point.
did you know, John,
Did you know?
that wait a minute, let me make sure I have it in the right place here. Did you know that did you know about the Bronx Manhattan High Bridge?
Yes, I did know about that.
Did you know that it's the oldest bridge in the city?
Really? That I
Yes.
didn't know.
It was built in 1848. It was actually built 35 years before the Brooklyn Bridge.
Really?
Yes.
Damn.
And I'm going to put up a little picture of it now, just so you guys can see it. If I can find where the picture. Oh, here it is. So this is what it looks like.
Oh wow.
And
See,
it was
look at that.
it was closed for like 40 years, and it eventually they was renovated, and then it opened back up in 2016 to pedestrians and bikers to walk and bike right back and forth.
And what does it connect?
It connects the Bronx and Manhattan.
Really?
Yes, it does.
Holy crap. Okay. That's
Yes.
like a big deal because freaking George Washington Bridge, that connects obviously um New Jersey with
New Jersey, yeah.
but it goes through also. You can get off of that bridge and go into
Right.
Manhattan and
Exactly.
then go directly into the Bronx.
Cross Bronx Expressway.
Yeah, it's the only way you can actually do that. So
Exactly.
so that's good to know. Huh? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's
See,
awesome.
I got you with a couple of them there.
That's good. That's pretty good. And
Mhm.
in case anybody wants to know where I was baptized, there it is.
Yes.
And there's George right there in the middle walking. He got kicked out again. He's always getting kicked out. I keep telling him, keep your pants up. Don't listen, especially at church. But yeah, that was St. John Chrysostom. That was the church that we would go to. It was right across the street from our.
I used to go to that church. My mom used to bring me to that church every Sunday. We used to take the train sometimes and get off right there and go to that church and then take the train back.
Every Sunday, I would go to church with my grandma. My grandmother was kind of big in the church. Like she was big time. Like she was part of a special group of women called las mujeres de la Santa María Madre de Dios. I can't remember what it was called, but it was
La
something.
Mujeres de Santa.
Yeah, it was something like
something. No, that's Santeria.
Yeah, it was something. Not Santeria, no. It was Guadalupe, something like that.
Like Guadalupe.
Yeah, something like that.
I don't know.
Hi, Sanchicha.
So she was in a motorcycle gang, basically.
Yeah, basically. She had this helmet and this leather jacket. But they all sat in the front in a special group, and Titi Mary was in there. Our
Titi
aunt,
Mary.
Titi Lula, was in that. Do you remember? No, you don't remember this guy, but there was a guy named Che. I don't remember Che. We're still friends on Facebook, but his mom was in there, and she was a big part of our group. And of course, my grandmother. And my grandmother was pretty big within the church. She would actually, in the Bronx, whenever someone would, passed away or something happened, they would always do what's called a rosary, right? If anybody knows what that is, right? Yes. And so my grandmother was like known as someone that would lead a rosary for people. Right. So she would be invited to people's houses to lead their rosary when somebody would pass away. That she would do the rosary. And I remember sitting there because she would take me along to these and to these seances. No, I'm just kidding. No, she would take me along to. I'm sorry. Please do not write me letters. No, but she would actually.
That's John Henry Soto at protonmail.com.
She would take me along to these, and I'll be sitting there. I'm sitting there, and one day she was asked to speak.
Tongue? Oh no.
She's actually asked to speak, right? And so I remember being blown away by how eloquent she was.
Right.
She talked about the word faith,
Mhm.
and in Spanish the word faith is fe. It's only two words, right? Fe.
Okay.
I mean
Right.
two letters.
Right.
And so she talked about the word faith and how it's such a small word, but it means so much, and how you have to take these two little letters and put them together and come up with this whole thing. That's a lot to ask of us, but we have to find ways. And she really went off on this thing, and I remember sitting there going, wow, she's really something, you know. And it was really impressive to
Mhm.
see her do that. She was I mean, my grandmother was awesome. My grandmother was tough though. My grandmother was not your typical grandma. She worked,
Mhm.
she retired working from a
Right.
factory. She worked at a factory. She was, you know, she left school in the third grade, in order to be able to work. And she washed clothes in the river. She was a seamstress,
Right.
and those are the kind of jobs that she always had. Um, and she taught me how to run the sewing machine, so I learned how to do that. And I would fix her sewing machine, and I knew all about la bobina. She's like, no, se rompió la bobina. Tiene que so I learned how to, and this was before YouTube, so I
Yes.
couldn't YouTube how to fix it. I had to just go in there and figure it out, and I figured things out. But she was a very tough lady. You know,
Yes. And I got to know her a lot when she used to visit my grandmother.
oh yeah, and they got together, and it was just a
Yeah.
wonderful wonderful gathering.
Yeah.
We're going on for an hour talking about the Bronx. We could probably go on another hour easily because I didn't
Yeah.
even
But
show some of the stuff that
we
I
got
knew.
to
This
do a
was gonna,
part two to this. Definitely
yeah,
got to
we
do a
definitely
part
will
two.
do that because I want to actually have some people come on.
Mhm.
So if you're from the Bronx, I might actually invite some people that I actually know. I say, come on the Bronx and just tell their story about growing up there. We'll
Yeah.
have a few people come on. We'll do that again, and we'll schedule that for very soon. But yeah, last words, Jorge.
Well, I mean, I just want to say that it was like what you said in the beginning, I think was accurate. How the Bronx really shaped you. It shaped
It
me.
did. It
It
did.
it really shaped you the person, and
It made me also appreciate things a little bit more. Like I don't
correct.
have the I don't have the concerns that a lot of people have
Yes.
because I
Yes.
was raised there.
Exactly.
So if I go to a store and they don't have, you know, skim milk half and half, whatever I'm looking for, in the coffee, that could never ever upset me.
Right.
You know,
Right.
actually, really, very little upsets me because
But
of that.
it's interesting because you've seen more than I did, but I've seen stuff even with you, right? We saw some stuff together, but
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
yeah, we can talk about that next time. But that changed me. But it does change you to the point where, and you're absolutely right. When you grow up there, you grow up in the middle, and you see these things, and you leave there. Your whole just your whole mind completely changes about life and what's really important and what's really
Yeah,
what like you said, what upsets you and what doesn't upset you and that type of thing. I completely
yeah,
agree with that. So
completely. So definitely. So, all right, folks, want to thank you all for tuning in. Appreciate it. We had some nice comments, some great people on here. We will be back for another part, and we're going to be talking. George and I are going to be doing this a lot more. We're going to be doing shows on subjects. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things. So, we're going to be doing that, and so stay tuned for that. It'll still be the Counterparts show, but it'll be a little bit different. We won't be interviewing people, or we might bring people on depending on the subject, but it'll be a little bit different setup. So, anyway, hope you're all doing well out there. Have a wonderful week. Take care of yourselves. George, thank you very much.
thank you,
From
sir.
all of us here at Counterparts, have a wonderful week. Take care. And as always, peace.
Peace.